Lore Together is proud to be part of the Boss Rush Games Network. Feel free to find out more at bossrushgames.com/network. Hi, I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where husband and wife team go over all the world building, storytelling, and characters in video games. Because that's what we like to do together. We lore together.
Yep, and this is episode 60.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. And before we get into the episode, if you'd like to contact us, you can do that over on Twitter at LoreTogether, on Instagram at LoreTogether, or through email at loretogether@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so over on patreon.com/loretogether, where you can pay a per episode pledge to get early access to episodes, access to our Q&As, discussions, and other things.
And our future project where we will be reading 2 of the Unreal books.
Yes.
So hopefully you like a little audio book action there.
Yeah, and early access to my Skyrim Let's Play.
Yes, with Lorik.
Yes. We
Very
are terrible with
exciting
names.
I personally have no problem with us staying on brand when it comes to the names of our characters. And if you weren't going to play a woman, Lorena wasn't really going to be appropriate.
And if you do like our podcast, we ask that you please rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening. We know that numerous platforms do allow you to rate, so
including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, the 2 biggest ones that we're thinking of. We hope that we earned a 5-star rating. So if you could, kindly put one down.
Thank you very much. So, this started out as 2 games in 1 episode.
This is the version of what had happened was for the Lore Together podcast.
I was going to cover games about games.
Games about games.
Specifically, I was going to cover the games, or the 2 released games, of Davey Reardon.
I'm sorry?
Who did the Stanley Parable in 2013 and the Beginner's Guide in 2015.
Okay, yeah.
The Stanley Parable
Yes.
does not have a lot of lore.
It's specifically built not to.
Yeah, there is lore, but the lore generally boils down to comically evil company is comically evil.
I mean, that's comical at least. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And it would be great to cover Stanley Parable.
Yes.
Because the new version of it will come out days after this episode.
Oh my gosh, seriously?
Yeah.
Well,
this is coming out, I think, the 23rd. The new game comes out on the 27th.
And if you haven't had a chance to experience the Stanley Parable, it's such a beautiful, absurdist romp. Just do whatever you think feels right in the game, and you will find an ending that is going to be fun for you.
There's 19 endings in the original game.
Some of which are better just left unknown to a human player.
But apparently the new stuff...
Yeah?
There's more new stuff than the old game in total.
Wow. So we're going to have to play that at some point.
Yeah. But the Beginner's Guide... Well, let me preface a little bit longer. The reason I picked these is I didn't want to dive into another big lore universe right now.
A lot of big jumps. I mean, it's funny how we were trying not to jump into big universes. Like the last episode that I did, and I ended up jumping into a kind of a huge thing. So
that we need to find a novel for that it's going to be impossible.
If you find Primal Rage: The Avatars, the novel, please let me know, and I will give you an address to send it to.
Yeah.
We need to read it. And we will do it for our patrons. Dagnabbit.
So I decided we would do a little cleanse and talk about a narrative game again. We've done these before.
I love a palate cleanser, with a little lime, a little cucumber, feeling refreshed.
They're sometimes directly called walking simulators, as we've talked about. We've done 2 of these already.
Right. Specifically, Dear Esther.
Yes.
And Everybody's Gone to the Rapture.
Yes, those were episodes 17 and 48, respectively.
Yes, and they're really good. In fact, really highly emotional pieces of art. Not all walking simulators are like that.
This is not going to be as emotional. I mean, maybe it is. We'll find out.
We'll know as soon as Safi starts crying how emotional it actually is.
I don't think it's going to be that type of emotional.
Oh, that's good.
So we start the beginner's guide hearing Davy Reardon,
Okay.
the lead designer on both games. He's actually our narrator.
Oh, cool.
And this is after the Stanley Parable. Again, this came out in 2015. Stanley Parable came out in 2011.
Yeah.
But this game covers events that happened between 2008 and 2011.
Okay.
So Davey meets a person named Coda at a game jam type event in Sacramento in 2009.
Coda. Okay.
Yeah. Screen name, pen name, pseudonym,
Something like
unique
that.
name, whichever. Doesn't matter. But if you don't know what a game jam is, you show up and you make games within a time limit. Usually it's about one weekend or a week, and that's kind of the goal.
Okay.
Davey is instantly interested in the game Coda is working on because it's unlike anything else at the event. We'll get to the game a little bit later. But Coda shows Davey other games he had developed, and the two become friends.
Cool.
And they're regularly talking online, and Coda would send more games for Davey to play, and sometimes returning from long periods of isolation and inactivity. At some point, Davey has access to 15 games made by Coda between 2008 and 2010.
That is a lot of production.
Yeah, but they're all small ideas.
Sure, like
and
short 10-minute game things or something like
sometimes
that.
not even that.
But that's still a lot of work. I mean, if for one person to work on a video game, it's so labor intensive. That's why you have such big teams doing it.
Yeah. But if you're doing passion projects, one person can do a level, and that level is a game. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And, of course, games are run the gamut of style. So we never actually hear or see Coda. They never show up in the game at all.
Okay.
So we can only know about him through the games as Davey presents them to us.
So he's using the games that he's received as a character study of Coda?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
And we are presented with 17 games total.
Oh.
None of them ever released before this collection.
But Davey was kind of like, hey, I now have a little bit of clout with the Stanley Parable. Would you like to do this pack with me?
Right.
Or this is totally fictional. He made this up as a premise to be able to release this.
I'm not going to recount all the narration. There's
Okay.
a lot of it in this game. And it is important narration, but we don't have forever.
No, we unfortunately do not.
We will be missing some nuance in some of the characterization by not covering all the dialogue.
So what you're saying is play it for yourself if you're intrigued.
Play it, or if you don't want to play it, it's around 1 to 1.5 hours. We'll likely play through the whole thing during our stream.
Oh, okay, cool. That's good to know.
Yeah. I think 2 hours is if you take your time.
I will
Yeah.
not be taking my time because there does come a point during the weeknights where I become a pumpkin.
David takes us through the games in chronological order. And the first one is called Intro, but it's not the name of the game itself. It's just what it's called here. It's the intro to the beginner's guide.
Okay.
And it's a basic level in Counter-Strike from October 2008. There's stuff that doesn't fit the theme. It's a desert town, but there's boxes floating around. And to me, it looks like a dev tinker space or something, just trying out ideas, seeing what works. And then you move on to better levels if you want to even do them.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. There's no interaction here. Just explore the small area and basically get the introduction from Davey that he's releasing this series to hopefully help Coda realize that people like his work and he should create more.
Right, exactly.
And yeah. So after this, we're going to cut to games pretty rapidly at times. So next we go to a game called Escape from Whisper.
Escape from Whisper.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're in a spaceship. Alarms are going off due to the activation of the Whisper machine, which means it's time to evacuate the ship. We have no lore for what that is. Don't expect a lot of lore in each game.
That makes sense. Okay.
The player has a gun that shoots white sparkles.
Sparkles? Pew pew.
Think basic asset.
Okay.
Yeah. Most of these would be considered probably prototypes at best.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's no enemies to attack. And once the gun is out of ammo, it can't be reloaded.
Interesting.
So you have like, I think 30 shots and that's it.
But there's no enemies
There's
to
no
attack.
enemies because no enemies put in.
Oh, okay.
So we eventually get to a point where the only option we have, and the one we are asked to do to save everyone else, is to jump into the Whisper Machine, killing us and saving the ship.
Interesting.
Yeah. Our next game is called Backwards,
All right.
where we can only do things if we're moving backwards.
I feel like I've heard of this premise before.
Yeah. Any other directional movement is impossible. Can't go left, can't go right, can't go forward. Everything has to be backwards. You can turn while moving backwards, but you can't like stand and like sidestep.
It's an interesting way to just live.
Yeah. And this is where we start to get messages in the games.
Okay.
Like, and these pop up as you walk past them backwards. They pop up receding away from you. Like, the past was behind her, but the future could not be seen. Why does the future keep changing? When she stops and looks, it becomes clearer. But if the future was always behind her, how will she find the strength to confront it?
Interesting.
And eventually the level just stops, automatically taking us to the next game.
So that was definitely more of a thought exercise.
They get a little thinky at times.
I mean, the Whisper game already was kind of like a trust fall of sorts,
Yeah.
right?
The next game is called Entering.
Okay.
The player walks forward along a straight path in a dark night. They pass a wooden sign that says, "You are now entering." They keep walking, and the game ends.
I find myself underwhelmed right now.
It'll make a little sense in a couple games.
Okay.
The next game is, so there's two names for the games,
Okay.
generally speaking. There's a level name, because it's a level in the game, in the beginner's guide.
Yes.
And then there's a game that Coda has given it sometimes, not always.
You mean a name that he's given the game
A title,
sometimes. Yeah.
This one is called Nonsense in Nearly Every Direction.
That sounds like the release of that movie is like everything.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I've
yeah.
heard that's a ridiculous, ridiculous movie, and I kind of want to see it, but I don't care enough to go to the theater.
I kind of want to see it too, just because the acting talent is.
I believe Michelle Yeoh is in it, right?
She's the lead.
Yeah.
And she's so compelling in general. It's probably just the way she delivers her lines. Like everything just like hits like a monument. I swear, when she talks.
Yeah. We
Anyway.
really have to finish Discovery Season 3. Anyway.
Yeah.
Nonsense in Nearly Every Direction. The game consists of a basic environment with 3 big dark gray rectangular parallel blocks placed over a gray ground under a blue sky. Basic level geometry.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
A linear staircase leading to a door near the top is connected to the right block.
Okay.
Okay. When the player reaches the middle of the staircase, the door opens, but the speed is severely reduced. Like you are crawling up the stairwell.
Interesting.
Davey will helpfully modify the game to speed us up.
Oh.
Yeah. The door leads to a living room with several messages in it expressing ideas for video games.
Mm-hmm.
After a few moments, the level automatically ends. Now we'll run through a couple of these ideas because I kind of like some of these. A game of only motivational quotes, played one after the other while the player cannot move.
That's just an existential crisis.
A game of only posters and concept art showing what the game is intended to be.
Isn't that essentially the art MMO that you were playing?
Yes.
Yes.
Kind of.
That is exactly what that is.
A game where you collect items, except the game automatically quits when you collect them all.
Oh, that's just a cruel joke.
I think Coda's sometimes a little bit of a troll.
A little bit? Okay.
A key in one game unlocks a door in a completely separate game.
That just sounds like a game that actually exists. You know what that also sounds like? Demo codes.
A normal game where you have to scream into a mic every 15 seconds to keep playing.
I love that. Ah! Ah! I feel like little buddy would be awesome with that. Once he realizes that, that would be actually the best game for a toddler because because they're so bad at motion that they need to be able to have the time to stop and think, and then they're like, oh yeah, ah.
A series of lavish manuals come with the game, giving you incorrect instructions on how to play.
Oh, that just sounds like a
troll.
An alternate reality game.
Yeah. I kind of like this one. You run a shop inside your body, selling your organs strategically to make the most money before you die. That's at least an interesting concept. I like that.
That's a Rick and Morty plot, I think. What the heck?
You walk around talking people down from pursuing their hopes and dreams.
Oh, no, that's dark. That's so dark.
This game gets a little dark.
Just a little?
I mean, it's no This War of Mine, but...
I was going to say, that's pretty dark to have... Okay, the goal of the game is to essentially diminish anything that anyone ever wanted to achieve.
The next game is either called Puzzle or Ready, Set, Fish. The first title makes more sense.
Okay.
The player walks through a house corridor until they reach a door with a lever on its left. When touched, the lever opens the door, revealing a small black space with dark smoke separating that door from another on the opposite side.
Huh.
Touching the lever again will close the door. The objective is to figure out how to open the opposite door.
Oh.
After we beat the puzzle, Davey will modify this game as well to show us all the mysteries and labyrinths that exist outside of the game space we can explore.
Wait, the game was only supposed to be the base, and then there's a whole labyrinth that we're supposed to be able to look at later?
I don't think we're supposed to. I think it's junk.
Is that like the joke? It's like, oh, you're so excited that you're going to get through this whole labyrinth, and it's just... Okay.
Next game is Exiting. Same as entering, but we are now exiting.
Wow.
So you kind of can take all four of those games as one
game.
Thing.
Yeah. Are we exiting out of the troll phase, or are we just getting into further, deeper trolliness?
Coda always seems to have a little bit of a trolliness to his dialogue or titles or gameplay.
Okay.
But I don't think it's like being a troll just to be a troll. I think it's just the sense of humor.
Okay.
Yeah. The next is called The Great and Lovely Descent.
Is it just you falling down a set of stairs?
No, and this is a particularly long one.
Oh.
The level begins a certain distance away from a brown house, which is a cafe called The Streetwise Fool.
Okay.
Located in the middle of nowhere. It's an immense, empty, white environment. Think the void from Matrix, or the construct, the white environment that there's nothing.
I just immediately think of the Stanley Parable with the buttons. Buttons.
One of 19 endings available in the original game.
It's the best ending.
I don't know about that.
I personally think because
the best ending is the art ending, but you have to play the game for a stupidly ridiculous 4 hours of annoying, difficult, oppressive gameplay. Because you have to save a baby and a puppy repeatedly.
Yes.
While the game makes the most ear-splitting klaxon sounds every time you save them.
That's why you just get a click bot for the button.
Did you... Okay, so mild diversion here because it's still about a game that this guy made.
Yeah.
But did you know that they fixed a glitch or a bug in that game?
No.
Years later? When you finished the art ending,
yeah,
there was like dialogue about like the essence of true art, but it was half hidden behind this weird block.
Oh, wow.
And the weird block was a door that they didn't remove because nobody had tested that part because nobody could sit for the 4 hours doing the stupid game.
Nobody thought to use the click bot or find a friend who they were...
No, there's no click bot. You have to literally run also from button to button continually for 4 hours.
Oh, no. There's a program for this. There's a program for this. Oh, my gosh. Sorry, but I believe that. I believe that glitch. They didn't find it till years later when somebody was like, you know what? I'm just going to listen to a few podcasts and just do this until finally something happens.
Yeah. So inside the kitchen of the cafe is a staircase leading, apparently, to a basement. However, when you go down it, the player actually enters a huge black environment as opposed to the white environment above.
Yeah.
where several white, gray, and orange blocks of differing shapes form a kind of path that you can fall down.
Oh, okay.
At the bottom, we find a prison, where the only choice we have is to walk forward into a cell where we have to wait for an hour. Davy will skip this for us.
Okay. Thank you, Davy.
And eventually we make our way out of the prison to another of those puzzle doors. Okay.
All right.
After getting through, it's always the same solution. After getting through, we actually find our first branching dialogue tree.
Oh.
Kind of. It's a bit weird, as you might expect. NPCs ask us how we got to where they are. Basically, it's like a meeting room or something. How we got through the door. Where are we from? All this stuff. And eventually, after all this dialogue and all these questions, it kind of doesn't matter what you answer in a way.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Yeah. We walk on to find ourselves in a small courtyard with a lamppost, which will become Coda's ending scene.
Oh.
A lamppost.
Okay.
Yeah. The game is a large, modern architectural building in a black void of a cave, kind of. It's cool. It's probably one of my favorite parts of this game.
Okay.
But it's a little weird. And there's glowing icons everywhere. These little tiny 10-pointed star circle icon things.
Can you interact with them?
Yes, and they are all messages left by other players.
Oh.
And you can read them all. And they complain about the game. They praise it. They even just talk about random things in complete non sequiturs. Some of my favorites are a game where you leave notes and suddenly everyone's a poet.
That's just true. That's just generally true.
Don't listen to the other notes.
All right, conspiratorial.
I'm not safe.
Oh, please don't. No, where is this going?
Who are all of you?
That's scary.
Scared of writing something. Don't want to feel judged.
Okay.
There's hundreds of them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Dave will point out the game doesn't go online, as we mentioned. And these were all put there by Coda. We see the puzzle door again, actually, and past the puzzle is a room of typewriters all typing with a lamppost next to them.
Okay.
It's kind of funny, actually. The last note that you can read in the game as you're walking towards these typewriters is a note that asks, how do you leave notes? Now, so you have to realize, Coda writes all of these.
Yeah.
And so I think he's having a joke there because it's near the very last room of notes, the game.
Right.
So how do you leave notes can be either, I don't know how to leave a note, but you just left a note, or it can be, how do you leave the game notes?
Right, exactly.
The typewriters actually ask questions. They ask, are you there? Please say something. It can be anything. I just need you to say something. Talk to me, please. Why are you having so much difficulty talking? And then our options are like speak, like, yeah.
Oh, okay.
The next game is called either Escape or Porn Stars Die 2. No idea what that's about.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting choice of title.
No idea. This level begins in a room with pieces of modern furniture and decoration. A glass table, a floor lamp, 2 sofas, 3 glass shelves, a white table with drawers, and a picture of urban landscape. Beyond iron bars...
What?
Yeah, one of the walls is iron bars. There is an outside path leading to a well, which is apparently located on the top of a hill.
Okay.
A door opens. There are staircases and corridors with side walls decorated with modern art, and the player walks down, gets to the bottom of the well, and the passage closes behind them, leaving them with no exit.
Interesting.
Level restarts. It's the same room. There's multiple versions of this game.
Okay.
There's no exits this time, and black circumvented rectangular spaces instead of furniture. Through the chat system, we are asked multiple questions about what piece of furniture we want to put in each part.
Oh, interesting.
There's 3 options of each of the answers, but it doesn't matter what you pick. The game will always put the exact same pieces in the same spot.
So you can tell it what to do and it's still going to manifest.
Yeah. And then the room begins expanding around you and like this maze of furniture appears.
Oh my gosh.
And then it resets again.
Is he trying to make a comment on hard determinism? Seriously.
In the third version, we're in the middle of an empty white environment, and there's a different room with the same furniture and several messages intended to be a tutorial on how to escape any prison environment.
Interesting.
The tutorial instructs the player 4 steps. Click on the table, slightly turn the picture, turn the floor lamp on and off, slightly push one of the sofas, and click on the shelves. A return button leading to the real prison then appears.
Oh.
Reset again. Back in the first room, there is no way to follow the steps since the table and other parts are missing.
Interesting.
Several other versions of this level are briefly shown, including an upside-down version, a version with a door instead of a well, a reverse prison where the player is boxed in surrounded by sky-textured walls, which is interesting, and a version with no cell bars but a gap in the terrain so the player can't reach the well still.
Yikes.
The last screen is a dark neighborhood.
Oh.
Where a lamppost and a telephone booth are highlighted.
Okay.
Inside the booth, the player talks to an alternate version of themselves before they escaped the prison. Though the answers and conversation came under all over the place and gets into some weird territory because, of course, we didn't escape. We just ended up not in it.
Right, exactly.
The next level is called House.
Can I give you a theory as what I think this is talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Alzheimer's.
No.
It just feel the hard
That particular game or the whole game in total?
The whole game in total.
No.
It just there seems to be this theme of an inescapable fate. And you are trying to use rationale to get out of it, and you can't. So maybe not Alzheimer's per se. I think I just thought of that just because of the idea of how frustrating it is, and like the idea of having all these like notes and questions from these random strangers that don't mean anything to you, and it, were they actually strangers in the first place? And of course when I play it, I'll probably feel about it differently because I'll actually be able to see it and experience it and know what the imagery is. But it feels like it's a comment on some sort of fatalistic health condition. Like, well, you couldn't really avoid this. This is just kind of what you're fated to have.
It may be. We don't know.
It just seems that way so far. But I'll let you keep going on. So you said the next game's titled House?
House.
Okay.
This level begins in a snowy, mountainous environment with a modern house in the middle of it.
Okay.
At its highest part, there is a closed door. Basically, you go down into the valley, and then you can go up to this closed door.
Okay.
Once inside the house, the player meets a house cleaner.
Okay.
Basically just a person who lives there or whatever. To whom they talk and perform several house cleaning tasks. Basically, put the dishes away, clean up the table.
Right.
Make the bed, clean the tub. And it's kind of fun. Like, the music is nice here. It's calming.
Yeah.
And the housekeeper and the player exchange several questions. And when the house cleaner asks the player if they're enjoying this, and the player is about to answer, the chat disappears, the house's windows disappear, the music stops, and the door at the top opens.
Oh.
The last screen, past the door, is a small environment with nothing besides grass and a lamppost. And Davey comments on this all, actually. Quote, I know that Coda really liked this game. Of all his work, actually, this was the only one that he called me up to come over and look at it.
Huh.
This was during a period of a few months where he was grossly happy all the time, just walked around with a constant smile on his face. I'm glad he made this. I'm glad he found some peace. But of course it can't last. The music stops, your companion is gone, it's time to leave. The door at the top of the hill is now open as well. Can't stay in the dark space for too long. You have to keep moving. It's how you stay alive.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
Next game is called Lecture, or Items You Love at Members Only Prices.
These titles are ridiculous.
They're not as terrible as Dr. Doom Jazz, though, are they?
Yeah, we were explaining to some friends recently the names of some of the characters of Paradise Killer, which the names only make sense if you know the aesthetic of the game.
Right.
But if you don't know the aesthetic of the game, Dr. Doom Jazz, Lady Love Dies, it It's just too much. It's just too much.
So lecture. It's a pretty brief game, actually. Takes place in a university classroom with a teacher giving a lecture and a student watching from one of the seats.
Okay.
The teacher is talking about perfection, stating that being perfect is effortless and necessary, among other things.
Uh-oh.
And eventually the camera starts shifting to other seats, probably suggesting that there are several students in the classroom.
Right.
Yeah. Suddenly the player begins controlling the teacher, from whose perspective there is a black hole on the wall behind the students.
Oh, wow.
Like, not like a black hole, like giant cosmic black hole. Like,
oh, wow.
Yeah. With a lamppost next to it.
The exit's always there.
Yeah.
And there to be seen, I guess.
The player also chooses which between 3 sentences that will be the next the teacher will say. So basically you have these options, and 1 is what you'll say, 1 and 2 are what you will think. Mm-hmm. And they kind of all reveal the teacher is not perfect and has several problems in life, is kind of a bit of a bigot.
Right.
And Davey comments how, like, I identified with this because we all have these thoughts at some point,
right.
And it was refreshing to see that everybody has this problem at some point in their life.
Exactly. That makes sense.
Next game is called Theater.
Okay.
This level begins at the backstage of a theater, with signs pointing the direction to the stage.
Okay.
Simple enough. When the player reaches the stage, several lights turn on and a dialogue system says, "The performance is beginning."
All right.
Through the dialogue system, an unseen character playing the role of the director tells the player to lean against a prop wall and says, "You'll be playing as me." The next task is to talk to a woman at the center of the stage, who is a professional photographer of animals, something the player, in this case playing the part of a character in the play, dreams to be. No matter what the player says, the director will not be satisfied. Several bouncing cones representing people around will then appear on stage. Basically, you walk into them and they push you back.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
As the player fails in their tasks, the director says he's going to try someone else.
Ooh.
They ask the player to step back from the stage as the back curtains open, revealing a lamppost.
Oh.
As the player steps back, iron gates fall from the ceiling to isolate the player, pleasing the director. Now, if the player remains stationary, there's only one single gate that falls, but if you keep walking backwards, gates keep falling.
So you're just getting farther and farther back?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
And then the level ends.
Huh. Interesting.
Next one is Mobius, or Mobius Trip.
Interesting how those titles are actually pretty close to each other.
Yeah. This level begins with a message saying the player will need to close their eyes in order to play it properly. You don't need to. Mobius is a spaceship. Actually, it's the SS Whisper, according to the wall.
Oh.
But it's not named anywhere beyond, like, the texture on the wall.
All right.
And the spaceship is about to crash against a structure representing a giant door. It's literally the puzzle door, just in space, just whoa.
This feels like that, if you remember the very famous internet joke about this cartoon artist having to draw these absurd cartoons for these commercials, and it was just going into his madness. And one of the most famous lines, you know, from early on, I think is like, "My spoon is too big." I forget what it's called. But this feels like something similarly, like there's just reference to all the other stuff that has been done, and now it's just the artist going kind of crazy.
Well, this ship is going to impact the door in about 20 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah. If the player does not complete the level before this, it automatically restarts. So it's 20. It's like about 20-ish seconds, and then it cycles back, and you're back at the beginning again.
Wow.
And the player must go down. You get told this through narration, but the player must go down, use an elevator to go to the upper part of the ship where they need to talk to one of the crew members standing next to a lamppost.
Interesting.
And there they must confess one of their weaknesses.
Interesting.
Literally, like, we have to be honest or else we're going to get hit. Like, the door will only respond to honesty. And basically, the only right options are ones that are self-defeating put-downs about creativity and work energy.
Oh, no. Is this a game about burnout?
Davey comments how this is where they start to really worry about Coda, how his work is no longer an outlet for him. Coda's games will become more desperate as we go on.
No, it is that horrible Flash. Well, it's not. It wasn't a Flash cartoon, but it is that cartoon.
The next game is particularly long in terms of what we're going to talk about. So the next game is called Island.
Okay, a man is not his own island. That's been said before.
This level begins in a completely white environment. The player asks a question and a chunk of land appears.
Okay.
It's kind of a cool effect. An unseen character starts talking to the player, revealing more chunks of land or more islands as they continue.
He has
talking.
Huge tracts of land.
The player agrees to help this character to solve a puzzle if they tell the player where the machine that makes their ideas is.
A machine that makes their ideas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Idea-making machine. After passing through a torii, Japanese gate, you've seen these around Shinto shrines. It's kind of a pretty basic, like you think of a Japanese arch and you're probably thinking of one of these.
Yeah, I see those in Animal Crossing all the time.
It is symbolically used to mark the transition from the mundane to the sacred. It's kind of interesting to be in this game, of all places. The player helps the character solve the puzzle, which is revealed to be another 2-door puzzle, and then exits through another torii. The unseen character tells the player that in exchange for helping them solve the puzzle, they will guide the player to the machine.
The machine where the ideas are kept. Okay.
In the next part, there are several boxes with sentences, dialogues from this and previous levels kind of all plastered on them.
Okay.
And the character tells the player that they will see the machine if they keep saying good things about the work of making games. Affirmations like, I like making games.
So it's almost like a job interview.
As the game continues, more sentence boxes will fall. Basically, you're breaking them apart and breaking through them until the unseen character finally says that they are free and reveals that the player is outside the furniture room prison next to the lamppost. Basically, it's the same room from Porn Stars Die 2.
Oh, wow.
But we're outside. A crying woman can be seen inside, and as we approach, the game ends.
Whoa. That was a failed job interview?
I don't know.
It's just
It's kind of a weird one. I think it's more like you can lie to yourself about the fact that you're enjoying something.
Right, of course.
Yeah. Davey is legitimately worried for his friend, given how he seems to have no love for the games he makes, but just keeps churning them out.
Right.
Quote, because from my perspective at the time, and just what I knew of him, this was a result of how isolated he was. He was in his own little bubble, sitting at his computer all day, not really showing his games to anyone, not releasing them on the internet, and so he didn't have anyone outside of himself to connect with. He had no outlet to ground himself on.
Yeah, a creator creating in a vacuum just tends to be an unproductive, self-deprecating mess.
You can't talk yourself out of loneliness. It doesn't work that way. You can't be the one writing both the questions and the answers. There's no movement. There's no circulation. If all your anxieties are being channeled into your work, then if the work ever fails, you have no backup and you're just going to crash.
Well, it's also...
That's Davy's quote.
Yeah, but it's also to the point that Davy's making. I understood that part. But the point that Davy's making, that's counter to human nature as well. We are a social species, and even those of us who are introverts, which, Mystic, you are definitely one, you still need social interaction and connection and people you can depend on. Mm-hmm. You just don't need as many of them or as much of them, and they don't energize you.
Right.
You know, that's just the difference. It's interesting because a lot of these really creative pursuits will be pursued by introverted people because they're like, well, I don't need people. I just need, a project. I need to create. I need to have something that will fulfill my time, will fill my time with something fun. And in actuality, that's a misunderstanding of human nature and who you are, when really you need to connect. Yeah, you need to create and be on your own and rejuvenate yourself. But if you don't connect with other people, if you don't have any other interaction, I mean, you're hurting yourself.
Right. Next game is called The Machine.
Oh, great. This is just, we're spiraling downward, I see.
This level begins in front of a building entrance with a guard next to it. The guard says, the machine has been captured and is ready to be interrogated, adding that someone called the press, and the machine calls itself Coda.
Oh, interesting.
The next part is a corridor with several journalists labeled press.
Mm-hmm.
They ask several questions about the machine, and in the next room, the player confronts the machine.
Oh, okay.
The player asks the machine several questions, saying that it stopped and it needs to apologize, but nothing is answered.
Huh.
The player then exits the room and tells the watching press that the machine will not do what they wanted, and it, or its creations, need to be destroyed.
Uh-oh.
In the next part, the player holds a gun similar to that seen in Whisper,
Oh.
and shoots several of the previous game scenarios. Basically, the gun creates white spots all over the environment as if it was erasing all the content.
Huh.
Finally, the player confronts the machine again in a small room with a lamppost.
Mm-hmm.
The machine tells the player to drop their weapon, but they instead aim at the machine and start shooting against it, producing smoke and ending the level.
Oh.
Davey at this point thinks Coda is isolating and stuck in his own head, so he decides to help his friend and get some validation so he can finally see how good his work is. He shows some of Coda's games to his friends and tells Coda how much they all loved it. Coda then disappears for a while.
Wow.
Eventually, we get the game The Tower. This is the last game we get of Coda's.
Oh, no.
And this one is very different.
Okay.
The beginning of the game is a very small room with modern architecture. But as the player exits, the rest is revealed to be the entrance to a dark stone tower, which, according to Davey, and I can agree with him, feels cold and distant. It has a huge, very tall red gate at the beginning.
Right.
And the map is dark. It's actively hostile to the player.
Right.
There's an invisible maze that when you hit a wall, the game makes huge flashing red screens and an annoying sound before putting you back at the start of the maze.
Oh, wow.
An invisible maze. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. So it's rote memory is going to get you through it.
Davey puts a bridge over the maze for us.
Oh, okay, great.
There's a combination lock that we have to brute force. It's a
Whoa.
long combination. Davey gives us the code. Every single thing in the game, short of loot boxes, is here to punish the player.
Huh.
Right? There's a door that actually can't be opened. Davey has to actually open the door for us because there's no way for us to do it.
Wow.
When Davey gets us over the maze, though, he comments, "To be fair, it's not like this is the first game that needed some modification to be playable. Like the house cleaning game. You know that one used to actually loop the cleaning chores and you just clean the house forever? I had to cut it off so you could exit the house and the game would actually end. But that game had an idea it was trying to communicate. What's the deeper idea behind an invisible maze?" Davey laments that he doesn't understand this game, and Coda has never explained his games to him, what they mean, what motifs like the 3 dots means. It's basically like, randomly there's 3 dots in many of the games, but there's no idea what they mean.
So
There's plenty of theories.
there's theories. Like, I'm sure people have said it's an ellipses.
They're not centered. So people think somebody thought it might be the Steam logo.
If they're not centered as in like they're not in any sort of line.
It's almost like a V shape.
Okay.
Yeah. In the last set of rooms and corridors, the style goes back to modern architecture.
Okay.
And now we get several messages from Coda to Davey,
Oh.
while Davey comments about them in narration. Coda complains that Davey has been modifying his games and showing his games to people. And also about Davey assuming Coda is depressed because he misinterprets his games. Literally, one of the lines is, "Please stop adding lampposts to my games."
Interesting.
Yeah. Coda writes that Davey is not his problem to solve and terminates their friendship, mentioning that he cannot continue making games as Davey has corrupted his creative space. Davey has been getting validation from Coda's work from others and from his own interpretations. Basically, when I show other people your games, I feel like I am doing something important.
Huh.
So he's getting validation from Coda's work.
Right.
Yeah. In a last-ditch effort, Davey releases the beginner's guide to reach Coda, because he can't reach him any other way, and beg him to begin creating again, saying, quote, this is the end of a long thing, quote,
Yeah.
"I want to know how not to hate myself. Please, I'm fading. All I want to know is that I'm going to be okay."
That's weird. Okay.
Epilogue. And this is the last game, and the only one not by Coda, probably.
Yeah.
We traverse various environments. Davy laments what he's done and tries to move on to get some sort of help, some sort of closure, some sort of validation other than external.
Yeah. Interesting.
Quote, I guess if someone had told me ahead of time that he just really enjoyed making prison games, maybe I wouldn't have thought he was so desperate. I wouldn't have told so many people that he was depressed. Maybe he just likes making prisons. And later on, as we walk through all these different environments, and they're kind of stark environments, and it's kind of a weird level, but he goes, I'm starting to feel like I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot that I need to make up for. And then he just says, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And says, okay, and we're left to kind of finish. And we eventually find ourselves back at the blue beam from Escape from Whisper.
Okay.
And walking to the beam, instead of dying,
mm-hmm.
we float upward. And eventually we reveal this giant and endless labyrinth.
Oh, wow.
And then we go to credits.
Oh, interesting. So,
obviously Davy in this narrative is fictional. Yeah. Played by the real Davy.
Yeah,
so.
It's after a point it was kind of like, yeah, this is definitely just a storytelling device.
Yeah. It's definitely a good examination of external validation and authorial intent.
Well, yeah. And like the theory of like are all creations meant to be consumed by the public?
Right.
Yeah.
There's this thing that I mean, I don't know if you do, but I do. I just have ideas.
Yeah.
I'll start 2 pages of a story and that'll be it.
Yeah, I've done that plenty of times.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what it is, the equivalent of it.
And there's nothing, you need to be able to do that. Sometimes you just need a one-off thing that you do.
It's like, I'm going to start this. It doesn't go anywhere. Next thing.
Yeah. I think a lot of creative people do that.
But, like, it'd be like getting access to someone's hard drive and then releasing all their incomplete works. Well,
but I also like the commentary it's trying to make about reading something onto someone.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that there's a person out there who wants to make these games where they feel trapped and enclosed and fatalistic and deterministic and are very upset that they have a friend who wants to show them something great, like because they think it's an expression of their inner mind, their inner workings. And there's 2 sides to that coin for me.
But I think part of it is you can't know someone just by one avenue of their life.
No, that's very true. That's only one facet.
He could just like making those games and have tons of friends he does other things with, but Davy doesn't do those with him.
Right. Like, for example, he's perfectly fine and he hangs out. He's actually part of like, I don't know, some sort of club.
Yeah.
He could have some other hobby where he has a lot of friends that do something different and they see a different side of him.
Yeah.
Kind of like how the personality of the person you bring to work is different than the personality of the person you bring to other stuff. I'm definitely a different person in the office than I am talking to people outside of the office for work, then talking to people who are playing tabletop games at our home versus this podcast. I mean,
yeah,
multifaceted individuals, and it is a good point that if the only thing you saw of Coda was the games you make, you can't determine whether or not he's crying for help, or he's just a troll,
right?
Or he just finds something fascinating about the idea of prisons.
Could just be a role play thing. Like, could be just the thing like, I want to experience prisons. Let me make prisons, and that'll be it.
It even could be something that's therapeutic to him. I feel so insanely free with so many decisions at this point in my life. I'd feel a lot more comfortable having a path that's determined for me and feeling a little trapped. Right. Like, there's a lot of different ways you could interpret it. And it's interesting that Davy's like, I have to help my friend and be a savior.
Well, I think also that is Davy not realizing that he himself needs help.
There are a lot of people who focus on other people's problems so they don't have to focus on their own.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And there is one line that Coda does say in the tower
Yeah.
And it's like, I hope you find the help that you need.
Yeah.
And when you do, don't tell me.
He's like, I'm done. This part of your life knowing me is over.
Yeah.
It feels like. I think that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with. I come from a different background in the sense of when I was in elementary school, I changed schools a lot, almost as much as an Army brat would. And I think one of the things you learn when you have to change scenery so much in your early years is the idea that you have to make new friends. And luckily, my brother and I were extroverts, so it was really easy for us to make new friends. And it wasn't such a painful transition time after time again. But most people don't do that.
Right.
Most people don't have that background. And it's probably healthy if you don't. And I'm not saying it was definitely not easy for us. It was just something that we were able to take to easier than other people would.
Mm-hmm.
Because of our personalities. So I think Coda, that's a very interesting point. Coda's basically essentially saying our friendship is over and that's okay.
Yeah.
And you need to move, and you need to understand that that's okay.
I think that's why I told people that a lot when people were going through things, that every relationship ends.
Yeah.
No matter what you do,
yeah.
every relationship is going to end at some point, whether it's through somebody passing or you just grow apart.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually when I was really young. That's one of the things. I had a really bad ex in college once, and my mom made that point to me. And she goes, look, you have to understand at one point, one of you's going to die. So even if you were meant to be together forever, one of you's going to be alone.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how it is.
Now, there is also the comments here about the creative process in general. And Coda actually does also say, struggling to come up with new ideas is not making me depressed. Low points are just part of the process.
And it's so funny to think that Coda is the one that is okay with darkness and uncertainty. And it's Davy who's the one who needs to know, oh, I need to know the cheat codes. And if there's no cheat code, then I'm going to put in the cheat code for you. I'm going to put in that bridge. I'm going to put in the...
Now, that's
I'm going to speed up that stair walk.
Yeah. Now, that's an interesting thing, actually, because the last game, like, if you think about it, no normal player is going to be able to get through that.
Right.
Even if you get through the invisible maze, which people have.
Yeah. The door.
Even if the door, there's no way without modifying the game.
Right.
And only Davey would modify the game. I mean, okay, let's be honest. We just did a Patreon episode about mods, but in this lore context, only Davey is going to modify the tower.
In the lore context, the mods are the lore. Okay.
Yeah.
But it makes me think of certain things. Like, for example, we know people who are disabled, you know, and for some of them, not by birth. They happen to have something happen to them, and then their life changes dramatically. Mm-hmm. But the ones that seem to get through it, the most intact, seem to understand that door is not going to open again. Like, that part of my body, that part of my existence is now different.
Yeah. I may get the use of that leg back, or I may get the use of that hand back, or whatever, but it's never going to be what it used to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are people who are born with a disability who just are so used to that door not opening, they never try to open it.
Yeah.
You know?
But it's safe to say throughout the entire game that Davy is fictional Davy is a unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
literally, it's early on, actually, when you're talking about the stairs game where you're going upstairs. There's literally a point where you can walk around this large, expansive plane, like just the area where you're walking around when you start the game before you even get to the stairs.
Yeah.
And he'll say, oh, there's nothing over there. But if you go over there, there's 2 audio emitters that are very faint. Oh. So there is stuff over there. He just says there isn't. So... it's like, what is...
Because, so he's steering you away from...
Yeah. He steers you. He's the one who tells you about the lampposts. And there probably was a lamppost in one of the games. It makes sense the first time we see it for it to be there. It's a courtyard. A lamppost makes sense.
But then then there's this idea of that, like, Davy's like, oh, he probably meant to, he likes the lamppost. He probably wants another lamppost.
Well, the one that got to me is when he talks about putting the bridge over the maze, and he says, I had to modify the house cleaning game so it actually ended.
Right.
Because that game had an idea it was trying to communicate. So he's forcing his idea.
He is forcing his idea.
Or his interpretation into it.
Well, I mean, and I'm sorry, anybody who's into video games, who has played Tetris Endless Mode, knows that some games just, like,
don't end.
Or the Sims, like, part of it is just Animal Crossing. You don't need an ending,
right?
You know.
Now there's an interesting mode that you can play through on the beginner's guide where you don't have Davy's commentary, and therefore you don't have Davy's help.
Oh, interesting.
Certain things still happen.
Mm-hmm.
The house cleaning game will still end.
Oh, because Davy still modified it.
Well, no, but it has to actually end.
Yeah.
Like, to continue the game, there has to be an actual end to it. So I can understand that one not being Coda's original thought.
Yeah.
The prison thing, you do have to sit there for the hour. The stairs take about 5 minutes to jump up slowly.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's an interesting way to play that game.
So Coda was kind of just playing with the idea of being stuck and kind of probably just thinking outside the box of, like, a lot of what we admire and like about games is how, of, like, being able to be the fastest, the smartest, and the strongest, being able to solve it. And Coda's taking that idea and being like, but what if you just weren't that good at it? What if you couldn't be that good at it? What if you just had the deal? And I think it's an interesting thought experiment, at least.
Yeah.
And he has every right to explore it. And then there's Davy being like, but this is how games are made.
Yes. This is also a commentary on games as art.
Yeah.
So
your game must be like this. And of course, we hate that idea that games have to be one way or another in general.
I mean, I feel...
I should say the two of us feel that way. It's okay to... And I mean that differently than... say, well, these are the games I like to play and I only really want to play. Let's say you're like, I'm more of like a racing and FIFA. Why would you play FIFA soccer? At least don't buy every version of the game. But, like, I really am only into racing games and, like, FIFA every once in a while and something like that. Okay, that's fine. Those are your games and that's fine. I'm not going to say you're not a gamer. I'm not going to say that you need to play other video games.
Right.
But don't then tell me that every single video game a friend of yours says, hey, you're into video games. Maybe you might like, I don't know. Have you ever considered playing classic Counter-Strike? It's just kind of fun and I like to go back to it. You want to try it out with me? Then don't go into classic Counter-Strike being like, this graphics aren't as good and why aren't there any cars? And I wish there was a bit more I wish the competition was different. I don't like shooting the guns. Can we do something else in Counter-Strike? Then don't play Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's experience of what a game is has to be different because we're all so different anyway.
Yeah, gaming is subjective at its core.
Exactly.
And I think that's a good place to end it.
Yeah. Well, it's a weird kind of lore, right? Like, that's not... It's definitely something I can think about. If I was back in high school when I took... Funny story, side note. I was on the honors levels classes. I was in the AP levels classes. Snooty, if you know the American education system. But I was in AP level classes for stuff when I was in high school, my last couple of years there. And I decided I did not want to take AP Euro, which almost all of the hoity-toity college-bound kids were doing. I was tired of learning about European history because I felt like I'd done so much of it in my education, and I was feeling a little forced into learning about colonialism. I just was done. I was done with it at the age of 18. So I decided instead I was going to take philosophy and also Asian studies. And philosophy was the first semester. And philosophy, this is the kind of stuff that teacher, he taught both those classes, and he taught philosophy so well, he became the standard I rated all the rest of my professors on. And this is the kind of stuff that he would have loved to talk about. He loved new ideas in the space of like philosophy and thinking and the art of thinking about stuff. And the idea, not like what I think would have been more interesting would have been to talk about, well, what is Coda actually trying to say that Davy's not letting him say?
Right.
Like, what is Coda pointing out to us about gaming, about our perception of what gaming is, and then essentially what our perception of what other parts of our life in parallel to gaming might be.
Right.
You know, this idea you have to win, you have to complete it.
Yeah.
You know? Is that really a thing you're supposed to do? Like, that would be the part that would be, that I feel like if this was out when I was 18, that we'd be talking about in that philosophy class. I really...
Yeah.
So, that is to say, it's kind of... It's like the lore of... It's a thinky lore. It's very much a lore of... It is a philosophy lore.
Yeah.
Which is cool. So, good job, Mystic. I appreciate that.
And then we'll play it in the week after this comes out.
Yeah, and I'll probably still be aggravated at it. Sorry, that's just like I don't know.
It's a good game. I go and play it once in a while just to kind of relax in a weird way.
But it's interesting too, because now that I know that Davy's an unreliable narrator, like how annoying am I gonna... I wonder what's the difference between the first time you play it and you don't realize Davy's lying to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Versus like now we're gonna play it. We kind of know Davy's lying, right?
Yeah, I kind of spoiled it for you, but
well,
I have no option but to do that.
That is the risk we took with this podcast, and let me tell you, a spoiler's not going to stop me from playing a game. A bad game's going to stop me from playing a game, and this doesn't sound like a bad game. It sounds like a good one. So hopefully you guys will join us there, and in the meantime,
we'll catch you there.
Yeah, on Thursdays. Every other Thursday when done after an episode.
We're doing Skies of Arcadia with terrible, terrible voice acting.
The worst voice acting ever, but we're having fun with it, and we hope you would too, and we love when you guys stop by to say hi.
But thanks for listening to this episode.
Thanks so much. Catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.